I'm Carmine Gallo. I am thrilled to be speaking with Kristen Graham because we are both nerds, writing and communication nerds. Isn't that right, Kristen? We're gonna get wonky, nerd
True
out today.
story. True story. Word nerds.
You have taught writing to major enterprises, and that's what we're going to talk about today: how to improve your writing skills to get ahead in your career, to impress your readers. You've taught at enterprises like Amazon. You've taught writing at Amazon to Amazonians, to other large enterprises. And I think the fact that you teach writing to those type of companies is something that I really want to get across to everybody today. This is the important message, is that even a company like Amazon, which is global, high-tech, cloud-based, puts a premium on writing, as do a lot of other enterprises. It doesn't matter what field or industry you're in these days. Improving your writing skill will get you ahead. It is an essential skill. Am I overstating it, Kristen?
Well, I don't think so, as your fellow nerd. And I think it is writing, of course, but it's really the root of communication. So many of us with this digital last year, it is absolutely writing, but it's how are we exchanging information, receiving information, and remembering that information.
Because I can hear it now, Kristen. People who are watching this and saying to themselves, I'm an engineer. I'm a software developer. I'm not a novelist. How does this apply to me? Maybe I'll wait till Carmine's next video because this doesn't really apply to me. This whole concept, this whole skill of writing. That's the wrong attitude, isn't it?
Well, I've heard it many, many times, and I
You
have
have.
teenage
Okay,
boys
please. Yeah.
who ask me the same thing as they're doing their things. Here's what I would say to that, though.
Okay.
Communication, good communication is a competitive advantage. So if you're going to increase your odds of really having a successful, fruitful career in whatever industry, having fundamental writing skills sets you apart from the competition, just as your coding skills do, your financial skills and all the rest of it. So why wouldn't you strengthen a muscle that can get you ahead?
I'm a big believer in this, not just for the printed word, but for presentations. Most of what I've written about, starting with presentation skills of Steve Jobs and a book on the TED Talks, is about presenting. But what people need to realize is that almost every presentation starts with the written word. It's written in notes, it's written down, and that's where you can condense and sharpen and tighten your writing. So it all starts from the written word at some point, but email especially. So one study in particular showed a 72% increase in corporate email during the COVID pandemic, which would make sense because most of our interaction is virtual. And I think, Kristen, as more, let's see if you agree with me, as more employees move to remote work, even in a post-COVID pandemic, that the skill that we're talking about here, writing and especially emails, it doesn't go away. In fact, it's only going to grow more critical.
Yeah, I saw that same study over the weekend, and in fact, I just quoted it in a class I did this morning too, in terms of why people are feeling so overloaded with all the information. But as our short-term memory is getting more and more eroded with these digital times, we keep coming back to that written communication and primarily email because it's how we're capturing and keeping track of ourselves, what was decided, what was discussed, and what needs to be done still.
Kristen, can you offer some email tips for people in business who are not English literature majors or creative writing experts? What are some of the main tips that they should all be aware of?
Yes, please don't be a creative writing major. Nobody wants to read a novella on an email. That's tip number one. You're already ahead of the game if you didn't do that. Our email opportunity right now, specifically in that channel, is brevity is a courtesy to others. So if attention is the new currency in this digital age, that is how we bank information with each other and how we earn trust. If every time I sent Carmine an email, he had to go to a printer just to read out my pages and it was so dense that he couldn't get through it, you are either going to delete it, defer it, or skim it. So email specifically, being brief and being bright, and then be gone.
That's interesting. Some of your emails to me in our conversations, I recall as being brief. Like you would say something like, "Thank you, Carmine, for the invitation. I'm excited to have a conversation with you. Here are some times that I'm available."
Yeah.
Yeah, so be brief and be gone.
Well, sure. Save the relationship for this type of environment. Emails are about exchanging information and inspiring action. So the two best things that you can do is, what do they need to know? What do they need to do? Everything else is filler. And we can get into very specific email tips too. But these days, and I love that study that you just mentioned as well, the abundance of emails, they have 199 other emails they need to get to, Kristen. They don't need to hear a monologue from you. And it's not a bedtime story. Don't make me scroll all the way down or scroll with my finger on my phone to get to your point, because I will have no patience for your next email.
I am so glad you brought this up. Brevity. I like that. Brevity is the as a courtesy. Um, just get to the point and use email as different than building a relationship.
Absolutely.
Because before you and I started talking about this topic, we spent 10 or 15 minutes talking about your kids and my kids and golf and and see beautiful Seattle and all these other things.
Yeah.
So when I'm writing an email and I am interacting with people from all over the world, and perhaps it's someone who I haven't talked to in a while, well, I'm a talker and I'm interested in people. And so I kind of like to start with, hey, hope everything's been okay for you during COVID. Boy, hasn't this been crazy? What a disaster. How are you doing with the vaccinations in your country? You're saying that's that email is not the time to write a novella. So how do I, okay, there's the question then. How do
Yes.
I balance getting to the point? And we're going to have very specific tips on how to do that. But how do I balance getting to the point with expressing empathy and connecting with people? I like to
Absolutely.
talk.
So I'm going to give you an and, not an or, Carmine.
Okay.
You can get to the point and you can establish a relationship. When it's coming to the email specifically, front load it. We're going to talk about tips later, put your bottom line on top. I always think of this of the, if you remember nothing else, and most of the time people only have about 4 seconds that they're skimming that first part of your email. If they remember nothing else, you want to put that up there and then just reverse it. Put the information, if they could take it as a bite-sized piece, like a little takeaway snack. And then on the bottom of it, that's where you can have more of the relationship. Really hope you and your family are doing well. Enjoy your time in Florida. Look forward to connecting when you're back after your vacation. You can still have your personality, but don't bury the lead. Make sure they always, what is the purpose? What can they get out of it? And then you can put your relationship. And then also use your relationship in other channels. Email is for information. Webcams are for relationships.
I love that. Okay. Thank you. You've helped me.
I'm so
I'll leave the relationship for the signature. That's our first tip, though, and I know it's an important one. Bottom line on top. So, can we expand on that? You've already mentioned it,
yeah.
but what specifically do we mean by bottom line on top, so everyone can learn this terrific tip?
I'm a big fan of this one. So I call it the blot. What's your blot? If somebody's going to read your entire email and then be able to say, hey, what did Kristen email you about? If they can't say it in a sentence or two, you gave them way too much. So I always say, start with your blot, your bottom line on top. For anybody who has ever served in the military, they often call it the bluff, bottom line up front. And it is that get to the point. Then you can, I always think of what follows it as your double click. You can reinforce it, you can give more color, more context, you can answer some questions, but never let them wait to the end to figure out what that is. Bottom line on top, it's the #1 tip out there as people are trying to process all of that information coming quickly. Make them want to read more, but don't make them read more to know what you want.
Do you have any examples of bottom line on top?
Sure, sometimes it can be as simple and as straightforward as this email is going to all people managers in North America. That's not even, I haven't even gotten into the crux of it. At least now I know, why did I even get the note? So often we're trying to process through all of this abundance of emails. And it's like, am I in the to line? Am I in the CC line? Why am I getting this? So immediately take it off the table. And so that person can say, that information is related to me as a people manager. I really like what you said earlier too about the globalization. We can come back to that too. And so I can say, do I want to dig into it now or do I want to come back to it? If information is the currency, choice is a huge point. Do I need to engage with it now? I'm also a big fan of, bottom line on top could say, FYI only, new financial reports due the first of every month. Okay, you could even put that in your subject line. We can talk about subject lines later. Sometimes the beautiful thing could be right there, but underneath it, sample bottom line on tops do not have to be, it's not marketing. They do not have to have alliteration. They do need to have a subject and a verb. What's happening? Why? What do I need to know? What do I need to do? That's your bottom line on top. And then I can keep going. I can keep double clicking and scrolling down.
I see. Yep. So this email is going out to XYZ in order to reveal the next 3 steps of this initiative.
Sure.
Just
Let me
here's who
give
it's
you more
going out
detail.
to, and here is what the purpose of this email is.
What it is and what it's not. So being able to say, let's say you come out of a long, lengthy business meeting. We've all been in a lot of those. This is, hey, the purpose of this email is to recap all of the decisions made around our Q2 priorities. Below are the decisions made and the immediate next steps with actions, owners, and deadlines. Beautiful. Now I can skim, find out what it is, find out what I'm accountable for, and when I need to do something. You just saved me a lot of reading.
So that's the bottom line on top. That is the 2 or 3 sentences. So you're saying separate those at the very top. Can I put them in bold? Should I put them in bold?
Yes, please
Okay.
do.
And separate that from the rest of the email.
And do the bolding only at the top. Nobody wants to kind of go through and have to figure out different colors and underlines and italices. Our brains are too tired for that. And please don't put an emoji in your email to me. Let's save that for texting with each other. And it can be more detailed too. You could say, below is an update on our Singapore launch, including milestones, issues, and risks. Action is needed from the following people. And then you can put in bullets and do the rest. Make it skimmable, but make it clear. And white space, I love how you just said that.
Yep.
White space is another courtesy for your reader. Brain science has shown that in order to process and retain information, white space is the punctuation for the brain.
What you're saying is very complimentary to everything I've learned about delivering a compelling presentation as well. So what I teach people, what I teach executives, especially during a project launch or any presentation that is meant to move people to action in some way, even a sales presentation, when you're delivering a presentation, I don't say bottom line up top. It's more like give me the headline or the theme up top. Give me a reason to listen to the next 20 minutes of this presentation. And what I find too often is that reason is either buried in the middle or at the end. It's not a novel form. Okay. We're not waiting for the end for the conclusion. I know that's engaging when you're reading a book, but that presentation is different. Sounds like you're adapting, you're using something very similar when it comes to email. Give me the information that I need up front, not at the bottom of a lengthy email.
You're absolutely right. The purpose of email is to inform somebody, inspire something, hopefully action, and to not have a lot of follow-up required. It should be self-contained apparatus. And same with the presentation. We need to tell them, in journalism, they always say, tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them. And so coming into a meeting, you are not hosting a book club with people. We're not all here to admire a problem and then say, see you next Tuesday, Carmine. We are here to either inform, discuss, or decide.
Yeah. And we mentioned white space in presentations as well. I wrote a book on Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was very famous for putting one word on a slide or one image, but but he never filled a slide with words, which is the average PowerPoint slide today is typically filled with text.
Yeah.
You're saying it's the same type of design mentality goes into an email. Look at the design, allow it to breathe. You can have space in between your bottom line and maybe your 3 points.
You actually having that space is a mental highlighter. It's letting the brain, letting the recipient absorb what was just said, process it, and then ideally react to it. React and or remember. Because otherwise you're just giving a verbal book report or a written book report in an email.
Yeah.
If you're really going to be a great communicator, it's not about demonstrating what you know, it's about delivering what somebody needs. And white space is absolutely critical. There was a lot of psychological studies back in the 1950s about short-term memory. And they said there's a thing called the magical number 7. And it says that the brain can comprehend and receive about 5 to 9 pieces of information. Anything more than that, and we've all been in those meetings where it's just, or that PowerPoint slide that alone has 11 sentences, not even bullets. But 5 to 7 is about all, or 5 to 9 is about all that the brain is going to even remember walking out of that meeting. So you might have felt, oh, I gave them so much, but can they recall it 2 days later? It's not about how elegant you are. It's about
Kristen,
how much.
based on that, then I'm familiar with the study. I'm a big fan, and I always recommend this to everybody, which is stick to 3. Stick to 3 points or 3 buckets if you can. Give me 3 reasons to back the initiative. Give me three reasons to hire you. 3 features of a new product. Because I find when I let people kind of go on past that, they'll take it. They'll take it. They'll take the inch and go a mile, and it'll be a list of 12. So let's try
Yeah.
3 first.
Let me clarify, I was not meaning you can do 5 to 9 things per slide or per email.
Right.
I'm saying the maximum cognitive capacity that anybody's even going to be able to turn back around. 3 absolutely is the lather, rinse, repeat element. That's especially ensuring a lot of that. So
but 3, 5, but be careful with how many points you have, which let's get into bullet points. Okay. Now, bullet points is interesting because I've always suggested, and again, based on what I learned from Steve Jobs and how the TED style presentations are done, I've always suggested that when you have a presentation meant to inspire, motivate, especially to an audience, don't put bullet points on those slides. Those slides should be more creative, should be more visual. That's different though. That's different than slides that are meant to share information and attached or emailed or shared. And I would imagine email. Are bullet points okay in email?
Oh, absolutely. They're preferred. Your email should not be narrative blocks. You know, it's not going on the Amazon, #1 bestseller list. It really needs to be snackable information. And it really helps people to be able to skim it and understand what it is. It's so common in presentations or in email that we're giving them everything that we think is interesting and we're not helping them understand what is relevant. And bullet points, absolutely visually, but they also, from a critical thinking skills, forces the writer, because it can't be 3 paragraphs. A bullet point, by its very definition, needs to be a sentence or less. And so you're really having to do that brevity of word choice too. Ernest Hemingway would love bullet points in his emails where he writing them.
Okay, so you're okay then, and let's be clear, you're okay with no bullet points on certain slides and presentations, but bullet points are preferable in an email.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And I do see a great need for them. I would much rather see bullet points on a slide than a big chunk of text on a slide.
Sure.
Now in emails, for sure, it's just easier and most of us are reading our emails digitally, either on a phone. So think of how small that is, or the
Good
screen.
point. Yeah, I bring it
larger.
for slides because, as you know, I'm all about teaching people how to give presentations that stand out. And if you
Right.
start every slide with a headline, 18 bullet points and sub bullet points, and then you have another 23 slides looking exactly the same, that's not the most engaging way of
Oh,
making a connection with people.
it's an eye chart.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I think also to slides and presentation, the human brain can process information 60,000 times faster visually. So you want to be able to give them something because the speed, the brain is the original machine learning. It can process it so much more quickly. You don't have to spell everything out. And usually when a presenter is doing that or in an email, they're over indexing on trying to demonstrate their intellectual capability than they are about the reader's capacity.
Let's stick to the email and writing more effectively. How much time do I have to grab a reader's attention on an email?
Oh, you have 4 seconds.
4 seconds.
For the preview pane. So you're either going to have the preview pane that's over here on your desktop, or that little bit that comes up on your phone, if you even have that as your setting.
Mm-hmm.
About 4 seconds, which is actually 1 second longer than somebody could see a billboard on a highway if they're driving quickly. And all that's doing is quickly scanning the digital horizon to say, am I going to stop at this now and go on? Because I've got a lot of other red dots of emails. So 4 seconds is the initial scan to say, will I continue?
Okay. So that means that I have not read the bottom line on top. I have not read that yet. I've just only been able to look at the subject line and the preview.
Exactly. Which is why the subject line, the bottom line on top is critical for you as you're organizing your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But that subject line, it is your billboard on the information superhighway. So not making that cute, not making that clickbait. That really needs to be, what is this? And will I give it more than 4 seconds? So that's your knock on the front door.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any examples of subject lines that act as billboards?
Sure. So going back to what we said earlier, you could do something as simple as deadline update, financial reports due April 1. Okay, at least I have in there's action needed, here's that time frame, and here's what it's related to, a financial report. A lot of us try to either be friendly, clever, or creative in our subject lines. And a lot of people will write the subject line last. It's almost the afterthought, because we open up our screen, type everything in there, put in Carmine's name, and then it's like, oh, right, yeah, read me. You know, this is not Alice in Wonderland. We need to be able to say, here's why you should pay attention to my billboard over all these other ones.
You're giving me a lot to think about. See, why not make it? I guess we can't make it clickbaity, can we? Pay attention to this deadline, or you won't believe what happens next. That's it. But you're saying avoid being clickbaity.
Well, and here's why, and you mentioned it earlier too with the globalization. I think today, because of all of the preponderance of digital that we're getting, we don't have time to be clever. It's kind of like when you're driving in your car and you're trying to figure out what that license plate in front of you says before the stoplight changes. You don't want to leave somebody guessing, because guessing will turn to irritation. And it all goes back to that reputation and earning trust. The other thing too, we communicate in a global world. When we're trying to be clever, we're often narrowing the understanding of our audience. We do too much inside baseball by trying to be cute and clever. We're also not accounting for neurodiversity. And I don't just mean multi-language, I mean dyslexia. I mean people on the spectrum. I mean screen readers that are putting things out there. If anybody has listened to a recording of a voicemail where it's all automated, you won't believe what's going to happen. That's going to come across really awkward or ill-translated. So clarity is that competitive differentiator, but it's also the cleanest way to get information across.
Once someone opens an email, how many words do they read before they skip out?
Oh, I love this stat. So research has shown that you have 111 words before you lose 49% of your audience. Not that they won't necessarily come back to it later, but 111 words, and the Associated Press is the one who first came up with that stat, and it's been tested, which is your bottom line on top, etc. But
Specifically
with,
for email, Kristen?
specifically for email,
Okay.
it's a good practice with the rest of our communication elements.
Yes, I was just going to say. Yeah.
Absolutely. But it really gets back to that bottom line on top. But your 111 words are the most important. I'm not saying you only have 111 words, but that absolutely gets into that if you remember nothing else. Because by then, I was working with an executive at Amazon one time, and he was talking to a whole group of startups. And he said, you have 2 swipes of my finger on my phone before I stop reading. So if I haven't connected with what you're saying, I'm going on to the next one.
Wow.
I
Wow.
didn't do a scientific study to how many words that is.
No,
But
but that's fascinating too, because when I see an email
Mhm.
that clearly has 3 times that number of words, when I see it, I set it aside and move on. I don't
Absolutely.
even read it because it's already like my brain is working faster, right? And it's thinking ahead. That's more than 111 words, way
It
more.
is. Well, and your brain is doing what it is hardwired to do. It is scanning the horizon to see where you need to prioritize your time and attention. That is the hardwiring of our heads. And so I do this a lot too. I'll be like, oh, I love that newsletter. I'll come back and read it when I have time. Or, oh, I really like Carmine, but I don't have time for his note right now. We
Yeah.
are constantly prioritizing in microseconds.
Yeah. I don't think that would happen with me, but that's
No,
okay. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, no, I have an automatic folder
It's
that
like,
opens
oh,
it.
if Carmine's got a 4,000 word email, I'll have to read every word of it.
Yes, I have a special sound alert on my phone just for you.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, I understand that. And you talked about, one of Amazon's principles that we all know is to be customer obsessed. And what you're suggesting is to be reader obsessed in the same way.
That is 100% true. And it comes back to really what is the purpose? Why are you writing at all? So we're being so reliant on technology right now that we're trying to provide too much. And so within that, there's 2 elements to it. One is that we can absolutely be messy in our head as we're starting to write, but we need to write messy and then edit for our reader. Writing messy lets Kristen get all these thought bubbles out of my head, because I'm the type of person that if I don't quickly get something down, I'm going to forget. I forget why I walk into the kitchen most days, Carmine, honestly.
Yeah,
But
I've got
then
to write things
rewriting,
down too, of course.
exactly.
Yeah.
Being reader obsessed. So writing messy means I need to get what are my thought bubbles. Being reader obsessed comes back to says, now how are they going to receive that? How can I restructure? How can I add white space? How can I put that in a bullet? What can I delete? The single best thing we can do in reader obsession is say it shorter.
Kristen, I'm still fascinated by one thing, that a company like Amazon, you've taught writing classes at Amazon. I don't know of a lot of companies that put a premium on writing, or am I wrong? Or more companies than I know uh, placing a very important premium on this skill.
I think now more than ever, Carmine, they're understanding with the asynchronous nature and the digital nature that we're going to have to do fewer things better. And so
Okay, but
within
you
that,
agree that are changing
yes,
recently. Okay,
yes.
yeah.
We've all been on the other end of perilous PowerPoints or the long meetings or the monologues from individuals. But I do think that writing is having a renaissance of sorts in terms of communication and being the forefront. It's needed, and it's a courtesy for sure. And in order to stand out, we have to strengthen that skill or we'll get lost in the noise.
I love that. Let's not scare people. When my background is journalism, as I know yours is, uh, I do a lot of writing books, writing articles. So I'm constantly writing and trying to improve my writing, always. Writing is a skill and you can build it, and you never really get great at it. It's a hard thing to do. Uh,
Absolutely.
but we're not suggesting that every business student, every aspiring leader, every business professional is, Hemingway. That's not the point. You're not right. You don't have to be able to write the great American novel.
Right. Right. nobody is asking for your emails to win the Pulitzer. This is not about having compelling content. This is about having clear information. And that makes us all more productive because we're not having to search for it, to interpret it, or to open all the attachments that you just did on my email. Please don't do that. I don't have time to read your email, much less click on your attachments. And by the way, I'm probably on my phone. So there's a lot of those elements of we have to make it snackable. And you can say excerpted from the attached if you need it, but our trailing 12 months are showing a 10% lift in mobile orders. Here's what we need to do. What is our bottom line on top?
I love it. I love it. Any other tips that we haven't touched on? We've covered so many.
Oh, goodness. There are so many. We need a whole, we need lots of emails about this. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, I think within that is to say, why are we writing, first of all? Sometimes we launch so much into the delivery of something, of being able to say, is this a quicker, shorter? Back to your point about a conversation. Is there an opportunity, because we are so disconnected, is this something that we can do quickly? However, when we are writing, what is the core element that somebody can get out of it and quickly? So don't worry about your personality being eroded. Think more around the experience of that recipient who is probably checking it at 10 o'clock at night after being on multiple elements. So appreciating the environment that the recipient is receiving your information will go a long way versus you feeling like you're going to be graded for your words.
Before I jumped on the call with you, I saw some of these books behind me, and we've got Churchill, Winston Churchill, who was, someone who was always talking about brevity, and John Kennedy. Great communicators, great writers are their best editors. They're the ones who go over and over it and cut and cut and cut to eliminate. Are you suggesting we do the same thing? Because how do we keep it short? I would suggest in a presentation, and I want to see if this is the same with email. In a presentation, you go over it, and you condense how long it takes to get to that point, or to make a point or a story. It starts out as 5 minutes. The next time you're going to tell it in 3 minutes. Is it the same with an email during the draft stage before I send it?
It absolutely should be. Editing is raising the bar. You wouldn't have any athlete go out and do a huge cardio performance and not stretch. There is something to the mental muscle of capture it, get what you want, but that editing, not only is it ensuring clarity on your part, it is absolutely coming back and being more reader obsessed. I saw something recently where it said, I do my best proofreading after I hit send. I think we're all in that digital element right now, but that extra moments that we take absolutely strengthens the impact of how people are going to receive what we do. Do fewer things better.
Excellent. Kristen, thank you so much for all these tips to improve my writing too. I love it. I think all of us can learn to be better writers.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carmine. This was fun.
Okay. Thank you. Nice seeing you.
You too.